Many people were taught that being nice means being good. So they stay quiet when they are disrespected. They keep giving when they are drained. They keep forgiving while being wounded. But Islam does not teach you to destroy yourself to please people. There is a difference between kindness and weakness. And today you will learn the difference. Nice without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. When a believer lives without boundaries, her kindness slowly turns into self-betrayal. She begins to give more than she is able, tolerate more than she should, and remain silent about pain that is quietly destroying her heart. At first, it feels noble. She tells herself she is being patient, forgiving, and kind. But over time, that kindness becomes a weight she cannot carry. Her prayers feel heavy, her chest feels tight, her joy fades without explanation. Islam never called this righteousness. Allah never commanded you to erase yourself for the comfort of others. A heart that is constantly wounded in the name of niceness will eventually lose its light. The believer was created to walk in balance, not emotional exhaustion. When you refuse to draw lines around your heart, you are not being merciful, you are neglecting a trust Allah placed in your care. True goodness does not require self-destruction. True faith does not ask you to bleed in silence. Many people confuse kindness with submission. They believe saying no is selfish, that expressing discomfort is wrong, and that protecting their heart is a lack of faith. This belief traps them in cycles of pain. They stay in conversations that wound them. They remain in relationships that drain them. They continue to give to people who only take. And every time they ignore their own suffering, a piece of their spirit quietly breaks. The Prophet ﷺ taught mercy, but he also taught dignity. He taught compassion, but he also taught strength. When your kindness costs you your iman, your peace, and your self-respect, something is deeply wrong. Allah did not create you to become invisible in your own life. Without boundaries, the believer becomes vulnerable to emotional exploitation. People begin to expect your silence, your forgiveness, your endless availability. They grow comfortable with your pain. They stop valuing your presence because you never require anything in return. And slowly, your worth is reduced in their eyes, not because you lack value, but because you never protected it. A woman who gives without limits teaches others that her heart is expendable. A woman who remains silent in harm teaches others that her pain does not matter. This is not humility. This is self-betrayal. Allah honored you with dignity. When you abandon that dignity, you abandon the very gift Allah gave you. Boundaries do not make you harsh. They make you healthy. They teach people how to treat you, and they teach your soul how to breathe. When a woman finally decides that her heart matters, that her iman matters, and that her peace matters, she begins the process of healing. She no longer says yes when her soul is screaming no. She no longer stays quiet when her heart is breaking. She no longer sacrifices herself to keep others comfortable. And in that moment, Allah draws closer to her because she is finally honoring what He entrusted to her. There is a deep exhaustion that comes from being endlessly nice. It is the exhaustion of always understanding others while never being understood, of always giving while never receiving, of always forgiving while never being protected. This exhaustion is not from life itself. It is from carrying what you were never meant to carry. Allah did not create your heart to be a dumping ground for other people's wounds, expectations, and failures. When you continue tolerating what breaks you, your soul becomes weary, your faith becomes fragile, your spirit becomes tired of surviving instead of living. A woman who lives without boundaries eventually loses her voice. She becomes afraid to speak her truth. She second-guesses her feelings. She minimizes her pain. She tells herself it is not that bad, that others have it worse. that she should just be grateful, but Allah never commanded you to invalidate your own suffering. Your pain is seen by the one who created your heart. Your tears are known to the one who formed your soul. And He is not pleased when you repeatedly allow your heart to be wounded in the name of being nice. The moment you begin to protect your heart, your entire life begins to change. You start choosing peace over people-pleasing. You start choosing obedience over approval. You start choosing self-respect over silent suffering. This does not make you selfish. It makes you sincere. It means you finally understand that your soul is valuable, your iman is precious, and your time is sacred. Allah honors the servant who guards her heart for His sake. He replaces what she leaves with what she truly needs. Some people will resist your boundaries. They will say you changed. They will say you became cold. They will say you are difficult. But what they are truly witnessing is your growth. They are watching you step out of emotional captivity and into spiritual clarity. And not everyone will be comfortable with that. But the believer does not live for comfort. She lives for truth. And the truth is that your heart cannot heal while it is constantly being wounded. A woman who continues to be nice without boundaries eventually collapses inside. A woman who learns to protect her heart begins to rise. She becomes steady. She becomes calm. She becomes unshaken. Her kindness becomes pure instead of painful. Her mercy becomes strong instead of destructive. And her faith becomes firm instead of fragile. This is why niceness without boundaries is self-betrayal. It teaches you to abandon yourself. Boundaries teach you to honor what Allah created. And when you choose that honor, Allah fills your life with a peace the world cannot give and cannot take away. Islam honors strength, not people-pleasing. Islam never taught the believer to dissolve her identity in order to be accepted. It never commanded her to silence her pain so others can feel comfortable. Islam was revealed to free the soul, not to imprison it under the weight of pleasing people. A woman who lives for approval will eventually feel lost because the standards of people constantly shift. What pleased them yesterday may offend them tomorrow. But the standard of Allah is firm, unchanging, and merciful. When a woman builds her life around that standard, she becomes steady even when the world is unstable. She stops negotiating her faith, her values, and her dignity for acceptance. That decision alone transforms her entire inner world. She no longer wakes up anxious about how she is perceived. She wakes up focused on how she is standing before Allah. This shift does not make her harsh. It makes her whole. The strength Islam honors is not loud or aggressive. It is calm, rooted, and anchored in truth. It is the strength of a heart that refuses to be shaped by fear of people and instead allows itself to be shaped by trust in Allah. A people-pleasing heart is constantly exhausted because it is always running after approval, running after reassurance, running after validation. But the heart that seeks Allah's pleasure rests, even while striving. Islam teaches the believer that she cannot satisfy every soul, but she can satisfy her Lord. And when Allah is pleased, the heart finds peace. A woman who understands this becomes courageous. She speaks with clarity. She sets boundaries without guilt. She walks away without bitterness. She no longer apologizes for protecting her iman. This is the strength Islam celebrates. It is the strength that allows her to remain kind without becoming weak, patient without becoming passive, gentle without becoming fragile. Many women remain trapped in people-pleasing because they fear conflict more than they fear losing themselves. They fear being misunderstood more than they fear being misaligned with their Creator. Over time, this fear erodes their spirit. They become unsure of who they are. Their choices are driven by expectations rather than convictions. Their voice becomes quieter. Their heart becomes heavier. But Islam does not nurture fragile hearts. It nurtures courageous ones. The believer is called to stand upright upon truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. When a woman stops bending herself to satisfy others, she begins standing in her real identity, and Allah honors that stand. Islamic strength is visible in restraint. It is visible in discipline. It is visible in the woman who chooses obedience over popularity and sincerity over applause. She does not measure her life by how many people are pleased with her, but by how faithfully she is walking with Allah. She knows that pleasing people is temporary, but pleasing Allah is eternal. This understanding makes her unshakable. Criticism no longer controls her. Praise no longer inflates her. She remains steady because her heart is anchored in something far greater than opinion. When a woman abandons people-pleasing, she begins to experience a new level of emotional freedom. She no longer carries the burden of other people's expectations. She stops explaining herself endlessly. She releases the need to justify her boundaries. And with that release comes clarity. She becomes intentional with her time, her energy, and her relationships. Her life begins to reflect purpose instead of pressure. This is not rebellion. It is alignment with the way Allah created the soul to function. Islam honors the woman who protects her heart even when it costs her relationships. It honors the woman who walks away from what weakens her faith even when it makes her lonely. It honors the woman who chooses growth over comfort. Such a woman does not lose herself. She finds herself. She does not become distant from others. She becomes closer to Allah. And that closeness changes everything. The believer who embraces this strength becomes calm in chaos. She does not react impulsively. She reflects. She prays. She trusts. Her decisions are guided by wisdom rather than fear. Her patience is no longer rooted in silence, but in understanding. She remains gentle, yet firm, loving, yet protected, kind, yet unbreakable. People-pleasing creates a life of constant emotional instability. Islamic strength creates a life of inner peace. When a woman finally chooses Allah's approval over everyone else's, she begins living with a lightness she never knew before. Her chest feels open, her prayer feels sincere, her heart feels alive. She is no longer suffocating under the pressure of being everything for everyone. She is simply being what Allah created her to be. This is the strength Islam honors. Not the strength of dominance, not the strength of control, but the strength of alignment with truth, the strength of walking the straight path even when the world is pulling you in every direction, the strength of choosing the eternal over the temporary. When a woman embodies this strength, Allah elevates her in ways no human approval ever could. He grants her peace in her heart, clarity in her mind, and stability in her life. And that is a reward no audience can give and no rejection can take away. Why overgiving destroys your peace? Overgiving begins as kindness, but when it loses balance, it becomes a slow erosion of the soul. Many women give far beyond their emotional, spiritual, and physical capacity because they fear disappointing others. They fear being labeled selfish, cold, or ungrateful. So they continue pouring even when their own cup is empty. At first, it feels noble. They convince themselves that sacrifice is the price of love and endurance is the proof of character. But the heart was never designed to function under constant depletion. Overgiving does not strengthen a woman. It quietly fractures her. Her prayers grow heavy. Her patience thins. Her joy becomes distant. And she cannot understand why she feels so tired despite doing everything right. The truth is that Islam never called her to neglect herself in order to care for others. The Prophet ﷺ taught balance in every matter because balance preserves the heart and protects the faith. When giving becomes excessive, it no longer produces reward, it produces resentment, exhaustion, and inner collapse. A woman who overgives begins to disappear from her own life. Her needs become invisible, her boundaries dissolve, her time no longer belongs to her. She becomes a vessel everyone drinks from while she remains thirsty. This is not compassion. This is emotional self-neglect. Over time, she begins to feel unseen, unappreciated, and spiritually dry. Her heart becomes heavy with questions. Why am I always the one carrying everything? Why do I feel so alone, even when I am surrounded by people? These feelings are not weakness, they are warnings. Allah created the heart with limits for a reason. When a woman continuously ignores those limits, she disrupts the natural harmony of her soul. Overgiving also confuses people. When you never say no, others stop respecting your yes. When you never express your limits, others stop noticing your pain. They grow accustomed to your sacrifice and blind to your exhaustion. Not because they are evil, but because you taught them that your needs do not matter. This is one of the greatest harms of overgiving. It trains people to misuse your heart. Islam teaches dignity, not depletion. It teaches generosity, not self-destruction. The believer is encouraged to give, but never at the expense of her own spiritual health. A woman who constantly overgives eventually loses her sense of self. Her identity becomes wrapped in what she provides for others. When she is not needed, she feels worthless. When she is not serving, she feels anxious. Her worth becomes transactional rather than intrinsic. This is not the life Allah intended for her. Allah gave her value before she ever did anything for anyone. Her worth does not increase by how much she sacrifices or how much she suffers. It increases by how faithfully she walks with her Lord. Overgiving also weakens relationships. Instead of producing closeness, it creates imbalance. One side grows dependent, the other grows weary. Love turns into obligation, care turns into pressure, and slowly peace disappears. When a woman learns to give from fullness rather than emptiness, everything changes. Her kindness becomes sincere instead of strained. Her patience becomes genuine instead of forced. Her presence becomes joyful instead of exhausted. Islam protects the heart by teaching moderation. The Prophet ﷺ warned against extremes in all matters because extremes break what balance preserves. A woman who overgives is not more righteous, she is more vulnerable to collapse. When she begins to give with wisdom instead of fear, Allah replaces her exhaustion with tranquility. Overgiving steals your peace because it disconnects you from yourself. It leaves you constantly reacting to others instead of responding to Allah. It fills your days with responsibility but empties your nights of serenity. The heart was created to worship, not to be endlessly consumed by others' needs. When a woman finally chooses balance, she feels a shift in her entire being. Her chest becomes lighter, her thoughts become clearer, her prayer becomes alive again. She no longer feels guilty for resting. She no longer apologizes for having needs. She understands that caring for herself is not selfish, it is necessary. True giving flows from strength, not from fear. It flows from wholeness, not from emptiness. When a woman learns this, her peace returns. And when peace returns, everything else begins to heal. How to build respect through boundaries. Respect is not demanded. It is cultivated through clarity, consistency, and courage. A woman builds respect the moment she learns how to define what she will accept and what she will no longer tolerate. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate her. They are lines that protect her soul. When she establishes them with sincerity and firmness, her life begins to change. People may resist at first, but eventually they recognize that her presence carries weight. This is because boundaries communicate self-respect. They tell the world, my heart is valuable, my time is sacred, my faith matters. Islam honors this posture because it reflects obedience to Allah, who commands the believer to live with dignity and balance. A woman who understands this no longer apologizes for protecting herself. She stands calmly in her values, knowing that Allah sees her intention even when others do not. Boundaries also bring clarity to relationships. When expectations are unspoken, confusion grows. When limits are unclear, resentment follows. But when a woman expresses her boundaries with wisdom and kindness, she creates a healthy structure for connection. She teaches people how to treat her not through arguments, but through consistency. Each time she honors her limits, she reinforces her worth. Over time, others adjust their behavior because they recognize her firmness is not temporary, it is a reflection of who she is becoming. This process may feel uncomfortable, especially for a woman who was once overly accommodating, but discomfort is often the doorway to growth. A woman who builds respect through boundaries becomes emotionally steady. She no longer feels pulled in every direction by others' demands. Her energy is no longer scattered. She becomes present in her worship, focused in her goals, and intentional in her choices. This steadiness is attractive. It draws respect, not because she seeks it, but because she embodies it. Her calm speaks louder than words. Her consistency commands attention without force. When boundaries are absent, a woman's life becomes reactive. She moves according to others' moods, expectations, and opinions. When boundaries are present, she becomes proactive. She chooses what aligns with her values and steps away from what disturbs her peace. This shift transforms her entire world. She becomes confident without arrogance, gentle without weakness, and firm without harshness. Boundaries also protect her iman. She becomes careful about the conversations she entertains, the environments she enters, and the influences she allows near her heart. This awareness strengthens her relationship with Allah. Her faith grows because her heart is no longer constantly under attack. She feels lighter, calmer, and more connected to her purpose. Some people will misunderstand boundaries. They may accuse her of changing or becoming distant, but what they are witnessing is her healing. She is no longer surviving, she is living. She is no longer reacting, she is choosing. This is not rebellion, it is alignment with the way Allah designed the soul to thrive. Over time, her boundaries create a life of stability. Her relationships become healthier, her decisions become wiser, her confidence becomes quiet and deep. And the respect she builds is not superficial, it is rooted in her integrity. A woman who builds respect through boundaries no longer fears rejection. She understands that what is meant for her will always remain. What requires her to abandon herself was never meant to stay. This knowledge frees her. It allows her to walk away from what harms her without guilt and move toward what nourishes her without fear. Respect begins inside the heart. When a woman honors herself, the world eventually follows. And even if it does not, she remains at peace because her worth is already written by Allah. This is the power of boundaries. They do not close your life. They open it to dignity, clarity, and strength. When you stop being too nice, Allah protects your heart. When a woman finally stops being too nice, something extraordinary begins to happen in her life. Not because she becomes harsh, distant, or cold, but because she becomes honest. She stops forcing herself to fit into spaces that hurt her, stops giving explanations for boundaries Allah already permitted, and stops apologizing for protecting her soul. In that moment of clarity, Allah begins to protect her heart in ways she never experienced before. The believer who chooses obedience over people's approval steps under divine protection. Her heart becomes lighter, her thoughts become clearer, her prayer becomes deeper. This is not coincidence. This is the consequence of choosing Allah over the world. When she removes herself from what damages her iman, Allah surrounds her with what strengthens it. Many women are trapped in suffering because they were taught that goodness means endless tolerance. But Islam never taught the believer to remain in harm. The Prophet ﷺ never told the soul to accept injustice in the name of character. When a woman stops being too nice, she is not losing kindness, she is recovering dignity. She is no longer surrendering her peace to keep others comfortable. And Allah honors this recovery. He begins placing a barrier between her heart and what once wounded her. Situations that used to shake her no longer have the same effect. Words that once broke her no longer control her emotions. She is being protected not by walls, but by wisdom. When a woman walks away from emotional exploitation, Allah replaces exhaustion with tranquility. She begins to experience a new quality of life. Her nights become calmer, her mind becomes quieter, her chest feels open again. This peace is a gift from Allah to the servant who chose herself for His sake. It is a protection that cannot be purchased, negotiated, or earned through human effort. It is granted when the heart finally aligns with divine truth. Stopping excessive niceness also brings spiritual stability. Her worship becomes sincere rather than desperate. She no longer prays from a place of emotional collapse, but from a place of trust. She understands that Allah does not require her suffering to prove her faith. He requires her sincerity, obedience, and courage. When she honors that, Allah honors her in return. Over time, she notices changes around her. Certain people drift away, certain doors close, certain distractions fade, but in their place come clarity, healthier connections, and deeper faith. Allah removes what no longer serves her growth and replaces it with what nourishes her soul. She no longer begs for understanding because she understands herself. She no longer seeks validation because she knows her worth is written by Allah. The heart that is protected by Allah becomes unbreakable. Trials still come, but they no longer destroy. Hardship still visits, but it no longer defines her. Her strength does not come from emotional armor, it comes from spiritual grounding. She trusts Allah's plan even when it is difficult. She walks with calm even when life is uncertain. This transformation does not make her distant from people. It brings her closer to herself and her Lord. She becomes more loving because her love is no longer driven by fear. She becomes more patient because her patience is no longer rooted in self-neglect. She becomes more gentle because her gentleness is no longer fragile. When Allah protects a woman's heart, He protects her future. Her choices become wiser. Her path becomes clearer. Her purpose becomes stronger. And her life begins to reflect the beauty of faith in action. Stopping being too nice is not a loss. It is the beginning of healing. And that healing is one of the greatest protections Allah gives to a believing woman. Becoming calm, strong, and unbreakable. A woman becomes calm, strong, and unbreakable the moment she stops fighting the world and starts standing with Allah. Calm is not something you are born with. It is something you grow into when your heart learns where safety truly comes from. When a woman places her trust fully in Allah, her chest begins to breathe again. The constant anxiety, the racing thoughts, the fear of losing people, and the exhaustion of always proving herself slowly fade. She is no longer driven by panic, but by purpose. She is no longer reactive, but reflective. Her calm is not weakness, it is spiritual strength. It is the calm of someone who knows Allah is managing what she cannot. Strength grows inside her, not through control, but through surrender. She surrenders the illusion that she must fix everything, save everyone, and carry every burden. She learns to place what is heavy into Allah's hands. With each surrender, her heart becomes lighter and her spirit becomes firmer. She no longer collapses when life becomes difficult. She bends, adapts, and rises with wisdom. This strength is quiet. It does not shout or demand. It simply remains steady and resilient, even when the world around her shakes. Unbreakable does not mean untouched by pain. It means transformed by it. A woman becomes unbreakable when she allows hardship to refine her instead of ruin her. She begins to see every trial as a lesson from Allah, every delay as protection, and every loss as a redirection towards something better. Her perspective shifts, and that shift changes everything. What once would have destroyed her now strengthens her. What once caused her to fall now teaches her how to stand. She becomes calm because she understands qadr. She becomes strong because she practices sabr. She becomes unbreakable because she anchors her heart in iman. When problems arise, she does not panic, she prays. When doors close, she does not collapse, she trusts. When people disappoint her, she does not lose herself, she returns to Allah. This cycle of faith creates stability no storm can remove. Over time, her presence changes. Others sense her peace, they feel her steadiness, they notice her clarity. This is not the result of a perfect life. It is the result of a faithful heart. She walks through the same difficulties as everyone else, but she walks through them with Allah, and that makes all the difference. She also becomes deeply self-aware. She recognizes her limits, honors her needs, and protects her heart. She no longer apologizes for resting. She no longer feels guilty for choosing herself for Allah's sake. She understands that her soul must be nurtured, not neglected. This awareness preserves her energy and strengthens her faith. A calm, strong, and unbreakable woman does not chase validation. She does not fear loneliness. She does not shrink to be accepted. She knows who she is and whose she is. And that knowledge is her greatest protection. Her heart becomes a place of refuge, not a battlefield. Her mind becomes a space of clarity, not confusion. Her life becomes a journey of purpose, not pressure. She is no longer trying to survive the world. She is learning how to rise above it. This transformation does not happen overnight. It grows with every prayer, every choice of obedience, every moment of trust in Allah. And when the world sees her standing firm, they may wonder how she became so steady. The answer is simple. She placed her heart in the hands of the one who never fails. This is what it means to become calm, strong, and unbreakable. You are not created to exhaust your soul for the comfort of others. You are created to walk with dignity, faith, and purpose. Stop shrinking. Stop over-explaining. Stop apologizing for protecting your heart. Be kind, but be strong. Be gentle, but be firm. Be loving, but never abandon yourself. That is the balance Islam teaches.